Seeing the fallout from an undermanned Richmond going down to an even more undermanned Sydney, I was sitting around and waiting for the big problem at Richmond to be talked about. And then I listened to the footy media who talked about, is Taranto and Hopper the new Mitchell and O'Meara? And then I heard, is the era over? Is it Dimma's fault they were undisciplined because he was petulant in media conferences, if that is a thing? But the big problem at Richmond wasn't being talked about. And I waited, and I waited, and I waited, and it still hasn't been talked about. So, I'm going to. This is the biggest problem at Punt Road, and how easy it could be to fix it for the boys at the Tigers. Let's go through what the media's problem is. The end of an era. I mean, look, they've won 3 flags, and as a Hawthorn supporter, to any Richmond fans that might be watching this right now, ready to rip my head off, I can assure you that the moment you become a little bit too successful, the wait for you to fall off your perch is drastic by the media. Welcome! It's a pleasure to have you here. But the Hopper Taranto becoming Mitchell and O'Meara is a touch unfair for a couple of reasons. One, Taranto had already won a best and fairest at the Giants in a grand final season. Yes, they both were a touch injured, but they have both been pretty good. If your list of problems with the way that Richmond is playing right now features Taranto or Hopper in your top 5, are you even watching Richmond games properly? There are so many other issues that need to be spoken about when it comes to the Tigers. But the reason it's not going to be Mitchell and O'Meara are A, they're young, and B, they're not taking away from young kids. They're not. Who are these young Richmond midfielders that Taranto and Hopper are coming in and replacing? Exactly. And the other thing, although I really hate long-term deals, and Kane Cornes and Xavier Ellis are in vehement agreement about that, is they've got 7 years. They've got 7 years. Now, I don't think they should wait the entirety of those 7 years to compete again, but they've got the 7 years with those two. They can still build around them. This isn't the finished product, and Richmond weren't really parading around like it was. I had them in my top 4 this year, expecting things to go perfectly, and they clearly haven't. One of the biggest problems at Richmond, not the one that's the title of this video, but needs to be talked about anyway, is injuries. And you might be thinking, Daz, everyone's got injuries. Sydney, arguably, had worse injuries on the weekend. And yes, I would agree with you. The McCartans and Rampy, ugly. We all expected guys like Shea Bolton and their forwards to go genuinely bunter, and they didn't. 100% I'm in agreement with you. But they lost their best forward and the most underrated ruckman in the competition. If you really don't think Toby Nankervis is a top 5 player at Richmond, either watch more Richmond or you're wrong. The bloke is a very, very good footballer, and the drop-off between Lynch and their next best, not discounting Jack, I'll talk about him in a second, and the gap between Nankervis and the next ruckman is stark. Okay? The fact that those two went down is an issue, and they're going to be long-term, which is going to cause issues. Now, it is up to a professional football club to right those wrongs, of course, and to work through it, but Sydney, regardless of injuries, are still a premiership contender. They didn't get beaten by West Coast here. They didn't get beaten by the Giants. They didn't get beaten by Freo. They didn't get beaten by Hawthorn. They got beaten by the second best team last year. But the biggest problem at the Tigers right now concerns something that needs to be addressed in October. Unfortunately, it can't be addressed now. You might have noticed that the player in the thumbnail is actually Jack. Jack is not the big problem, but he is the stopgap towards the actual problem. Let's talk about what I mean. Dylan Grimes is 31, Robbie Tarrant is 33. But that's okay. Noah Bolter and Josh Gibkiss are next in line. Now, Noah Bolter had a genuine nightmare, and I would bet that he would not play a worse game than that for the rest of his career. Comfortably, a 6-pack of your poison, please. Everything he did right was instantly overtaken by a genuine brain fade or nightmare. It was really bad. Marlon Pickett's 30 on a wing. They've got guys like Hugo Ralphsmith that are developing on that side of the ball. But I don't think Pickett's going anywhere. He was Richmond's best, if not top 3 on the ground on Friday night. However, guys like Cochin, they're going to fall out. Taranto and Hopper are there. Easy. Even if Dusty goes at the end of this year or whenever he retires, they think they've got Dusty 2.0 in Shea Bolton. However, having a bloke that is a forward offensive threat with zero defensive bone in their body is not going to work if you're not as good as Dusty in his prime, and Shea is not that. He's just not. And the lack of defensive work is costing Richmond in their forward half, as they're one of the worst teams in retaining the ball inside their forward 50 if they don't score from the first entry. So, learn to tackle Shea? I don't really know what to say about Shea in this one, but he's not Dusty. Media, stop telling us he is. He ain't. The problem that Richmond have got, that big problem, and you could probably say arriving to my solo point in this video, is there's no one behind Jack. Even Lynch on his own. He ain't Jack. Jack was their only tall forward in the 2017 flag. I agree with you. Shane Edwards was their centre-half forward. They don't have a Shane Edwards either. But once Jack goes, it's going to be Lynch and Samson Ryan. Now, I've got nothing against Samson. He was terrific against Adelaide, but he's a tall, and what do we get told? Talls develop. Everyone else, every other position on the ground for the Tigers is developed. Now, yes, inconsistent this season, but everywhere else on the ground, they're ready to go. They've got a very good premiership-winning ruckman. Taranto and Hopper are very good midfielders. Yes, they're not the best kicks. Carlton's midfield aren't really the best kicks, and Champion Data told us they were the best in the competition coming into this year. The Bulldogs midfield are awesome kicks with Bontempelli and McRae. How's that working for them? Libba has arguably been their best mid overall, Bontempelli their best player, but if there's going to be one guy who can win a centre clearance and go in and under and win a hard ball, it's going to be Libba, who's not the best kick. So they're fine in that area. Key position defenders, they're fine. Running defenders, they're fine. Rioli is an All-Australian so far. Jaden Short, coming back into this side, is a very, very good player. They've got the outside run, like we said, with Pickett. Camden McIntosh, again, just had a nightmare. I don't think that's symptomatic of him as a player, but he's been better. But again, that run and gun is fine. Half forwards, they're pretty fine. I think Shea is still a star, regardless of what you think of the criticism I gave earlier, but their forward half is okay. They need a hell of a lot more pressure in that forward line. I never thought I'd say this, but guys like Butler, Higgins, and now Jason Castagna going out of that side is really hurting them because they're not retaining the ball inside 50 at all. I think Ryan Mansell is a good player. He has started the year pretty well. Fades out of games, but hey, that's the forward pocket. Yes, the forward pocket for Sydney did kick 6. He also had 25 touches and went through the midfield. Ryan Mansell ain't that. They got full forward covered. Lynch is a star. Centre forward is a 33-year-old who kicked 4 with 8 stitches. But this isn't 2017 anymore. They need help. Jack needs help. And Richmond need to get back to that hunger, which is probably another problem in and of itself. But what can Richmond do? Well, for this year, nothing. They just need Lynch back. They need Nank back. And they need to play their best to be the best. That's not really a groundbreaking revelation, but here we are. But what can they do at the end of the year? Well, if Cochin does retire and Dusty retires, whether he does or not, but they need salary cap space, somehow, without disrupting the youth. And they need to go get Mitch Georgiades. They need to go get a Ben King. They need to go and get a centre-half forward. They need to go get a guy who is very young and capable of knowing that he's going to be the number 2 behind Lynch. And Georgiades, well, he's used to being behind centre-half forwards. Todd Marshall and Charlie Dixon are ahead of him at this point. But you can't look at that kid and say he's not talented. Ben King and Tom Lynch, get in a bidding war with Collingwood. You might have lost the Adam Treloar one, but if you win the Ben King one, you're flying. But what can Richmond do from here? Hope, better effort, defensively, get back to that hunger that made them one of the best teams in the competition. Because if you look around, Essendon and St Kilda from here would be really disappointed not to play finals. Adelaide should be playing finals. Geelong aren't even in the 8 yet. It's a long season. If Richmond get left behind, they're not playing finals. And if you think the criticism now is huge, if they finish outside the 8, pressure comes on Dimma. So that's it, guys. Comment below. Let me know what you think of the Tigers. How good has Gather Round been, by the way? Love it. I'm not sure whether it should be an every year thing. If Adelaide want to keep it, maybe once every 2 years would be pretty cool. But comment below. Let me know what you think. And clearly, fans are giving up on the Tigers as seen by the poll that I ran on Friday night. If you want to get involved with these and other things, you can click that subscribe button. Join the Daz Talks Footy family. You can like this video if you like the video. Plenty coming throughout the week. Hope your team had a win. And if not, I hope you get through this week okay. Goodbye.